All righty, what's going on, Macro Perspective peeps, man? We got another great episode for you today, but before that, please like, comment, and subscribe. And also share, because remember, if you guys are sharing this episode today with someone you care about, even for someone, they could really utilize it with the people that are in here. Plus, you are most likely helping someone with a small business, a coaching platform, or something, and that always really helps. But today, I'm actually super excited to bring on our guest, Taylor Smith. Guys, this person and I right here, this phenomenal human being, we had some time in JITS. We had some time together as just kind of biohackers, I would say, back in the day in LA and things like that. But I know Taylor's been on an adventure. So here's what I'd love to do. Taylor, would you mind just kind of introducing yourself, a little synopsis of who you are, where you've been, and what you're up to now and what you're excited about, man?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you, first of all, for having me on here. And my goal is to help bring y'all and your whole community as much value as possible in the time that we have together. But my background right now, currently, I'm working as a health coach, specializing in mindfulness coaching for anxiety. And how can we use those inner resources to bring more peace of mind to life and any goals you want to move towards in life. But before that, like we talked about, we met doing jujitsu and working out and doing biohacking out in LA. And at that time, I was working on a podcast called Adventures in Health, really more focused around, I would say, trauma healing. How can we heal the body from severe trauma? I was working with someone who had, really suffered severe stroke, and a lot of characters we brought onto the podcast were people who have kind of been through some really intense times. But before that was, working with Bulletproof and doing biohacking at their facility out in Santa Monica, and really getting to see, okay, how much, if we throw as much money as possible at biohacking and human performance, like what happens? And I would say that was really like a huge catalyst to my own kind of moving in this direction towards mental health and mindfulness. Was kind of going through all of these different experiences and distilling what's at the root of this all, what's actually going to, what am I getting the most bang for my buck in terms of mental energy, learning, knowledge, and, taking action, essentially.
Dope. So bulletproof, like we're talking like bulletproof, like in your coffee, high octane type of bulletproof, correct? I just want to make sure that
That's
people are
that's the
aware.
one. Yeah, butter coffee, brain octane, famous Bulletproof.
That was the
Oh
time,
man.
man. That was the like that year.
How,
That book was popping off. Like everyone was all about it. I was always at the Bulletproof place in Santa Monica, like doing work for my clients. Like it was a thing, right, in LA.
Oh yeah, oh yeah.
well,
I mean, it was kind of like the original biohacking community of, you know, how extreme can I do? What extreme measures can I take for my health? I mean, the cast of characters that came through that area of Santa Monica during that time was just kind of wild and crazy.
Yeah.
yeah, I remember using some brain octane and some of the other stuff. Like, oh my god, it had to be like 8 years ago, 8 7 8 years ago at this point. Some of their then they branched into the protein bar space for a little bit, and then had a few of those. Remember those as like, I'm like, okay, I'm gonna get something that's like lower in carbs, because that was like before I started actually like coaching nutrition, and it was again well marketed, collagen, things that help with focus, all those things. And I was a fan. I mean, it was those bars, they did have the earlier iterations. I don't know if they fixed it, would like kind of stick to your mouth though, and your teeth.
Yeah.
um God, but it's reminiscent of just like, I guess, like my health journey when you bring up those particular products. And I still remember with my mentor, he's like, yeah, just throw like MCT oil inside of your smoothie, and like in this bulking phase. And I was literally just doing the smoothie that was like, he just called it a Superman shake, and it started as like MCT, and then I was obviously, then Bulletproof started taking off. It was like throwing in the brain octane in there, and those healthy MCT fats like after workouts was like, I mean, I felt great, man. Like inflammation and all those things were down. But then, InStep's Jason Phillips and talks to me about the importance of carbs for CrossFit performance. And then my life and body composition changed on a whole nother level too. So it's like, I think everything has utility. That's super cool that you were a part of that and got to see maybe some people that were more eccentric than even myself, the fitness fanatic type.
Yeah, absolutely. And I appreciate what you're sharing it too, of kind of that progression of trying different tools and resources out and seeing, okay, what effect is this having versus, okay, now I'm moving back in towards more carbs. Like what effect is this having? And that whole MCT brain octane craze, like you were sparking my memory to the time when I was more extreme than I am now, where I was literally just waking up in the morning and taking the bottle of MCT oil and just squeezing it into my mouth and just like starting the day like that. And I think back and I'm like, that was crazy. But you know, it is an experience.
I remember those times because I was that guy. I'd be like, I'm all about the MCT, Bulletproof, Dave Asprey, on it, all those things, because they were really making a scene back in those days. And I remember I had a friend over once, my buddy Walter. We were like in strength and conditioning classes together, kin classes. And I'm like, hey man, you want some coffee? And I remember I had the strawberry MCT and I loved it. I put it in his, and he's like, yo, what the F is this? Like, you know, he's like, I just wanted some creamer. I'm like, oh yeah, this is like a creamer, but it's healthier. But it's like you start seeing like how like eclectic you are, or like how odd you are, peculiar you are, because like you're doing all these like healthified things, and you realize like, okay, maybe not everyone is doing this kind of thing. And it just kind of like comes to show like, all right, you just got to have some balance. Like, yeah, incorporate some carbs, have a little bit of normal strawberry creamer instead of like all this bulletproof hacking kind of stuff. It was so funny, man.
Man, though, it was like the tail end of college now that I think about it. So it had to have been about 9 years ago. And I'm using, again, I think it was just a pure MCT oil. It was like the early iteration. It was Progenics More Muscle because it like quote has ingredients to help with IGF-1 stimulation as part of their marketing, but it was cookies and cream flavored. So I would be making my bulletproof coffee with this cookies and cream protein, and like it is just they don't make that flavor anymore. But I want to go back to that because I felt like my flow state of like being able to get work done was so high that like I've not been able to replicate it because like, well, I don't have the little cookie bits in my coffee. And God, flavors, man. It's funny how like a taste can take you back. If I had that right now, be over the moon.
That's so funny. Taylor, so you've done the bulletproof thing. I know you've done an event, definitely different pods and things like that. Take us through a little bit. You said you know before the pod you transitioned to some health coaching. You were at a different position, and now you're really helping people with like experiencing, you know, helping themselves out through healing of trauma and things like that. I'd love to kind of hear a little bit about that.
Yeah, for sure. So, I mean, really, it's been an evolution from, you know, those days of being more experimental and trying everything out. And I'll give you like the origin story and then kind of transition that into present day. But when I was working at the Bulletproof lab down in Santa Monica, they had, you know, everything under the sun for physical, mental hacking, you know, just across the board. And I spent probably the first 6 months really just going for all the physical technology they were using. Okay, how can I take this, you know, they called it, I think it was called the ARX machine or something, which was like, how can you maximize your, I'm spacing on the term, but how can you maximize your lift on your muscles, the strain you're putting on your muscles in like a 5-minute workout? And it was just like all these different physical things. There was another one that was like, you know, squeezing your arms and your legs to cut off blood circulation to like increase the amount of lactic acid burn and stimulate testosterone and human growth hormone. And so for the first 6 months, I was like, how can I max out on physical performance in this environment? You know, I have access to all these tools and resources, and I was able to, you know, monitor my body mass and body fat. And like, honestly, for the first 6 months, like I felt good, but there wasn't any like body changes. Right. Which was not, you know, too unheard of because I was in pretty good shape. But I decided at some point to say, okay, I'm going to stop doing everything and just focus on what are the mental hacks here that we have that are hacking, you know, neurofeedback, right? There's a lot of neurofeedback there. And then stimulating yourself into like these deep theta meditation states. And so how can I use these tools? How can I experiment with these tools and see what happens? Really just to see what happens. So I was like, okay, for the next month, I'm going to come every day and do the neurofeedback, and I'm going to do what they called the virtual float tank, which is just this tank that spins in circles and is supposed to induce a deep theta state where the people who create it said, you do 30 days of it, you can break any addiction and completely kind of rewrite your brain. And so I was like, okay, like, let's just go for it and see what happens. And that was kind of like a catalyst for the power of the brain and to influence the state of your mind, the state of your brain to influence everything down the chain. So I was monitoring my body health during that period. And the first week of just doing meditation, not doing any exercise, I put on like 5 pounds of muscle. Like after 6 months of putting on negligible muscle, like 1 week putting on 5 pounds. And just from tapping into, okay, how am I de-stressing? How am I relaxing? And then kind of springboarding off of that, of really diving deep into what the hell is going on here on an inner level. Like how is, and how can I basically optimize my time, spend less time trying to do everything. Like we talked about kind of to start this off, is like, okay, let me do this, let me do that. But then refining like over time, how do I do less but still feel good and get the same results? So that really started the kind of transition towards focusing more in on mental health, mental well-being, and ultimately kind of deeper states of consciousness, if you will. I don't know if you've had any good talks on deeper states of consciousness here on the pod yet, but really just kind of evolving into an inner exploration in biohacking and beyond, really. Does that answer the question?
No, that answers the question. And to be quite honest with you, I would love to continue down the path of deeper states of consciousness, just because this is actually, personally for me, something I'd like to explore a little bit more. Would you mind kind of covering what deeper states of consciousness you've gotten into, how you've done it, and, what tools, tips, and tricks that may be useful for the audience, but also at the same time, just like what you found was best practices for you? Because I think for me, I want to explore some things without necessarily having to be an extremist, if that makes sense. Just practical stuff,
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, so I'll start where it began for me and kind of go from there. I'm glad you're interested in diving in, because it is kind of, I think it's less talked about, but when we talk about it, it'll start, hopefully start to get clearer and easier and simple. But when I was at Bulletproof, we'll go back there, they had a technology called Heart Math. And it wasn't something that was like a big piece of technology. It was literally just like a cable you can plug into your phone. And what it's doing is it's measuring heart rate variability, which is basically a marker of stress. And the whole idea, or the whole premise of it, was if you can get your body into a state of physiological coherence, you're going to open the door toward experiencing kind of deeper states of consciousness. And so basically, how can we reduce stress enough to settle into a deeper state of being? And so for me, that was the catalyst in terms of kind of shaking everything up. But if I had to make it really, really simple, would be this transition from personal identity more towards presence, and really breaking down what does it mean to be a person having this experience. And then the question really is, well, what is aware of all of that? And that being a pointer into what's really at the root of our experience. And to me, that becomes less of an exploration necessarily of like deeper states of consciousness in a tangible way, but more of what is at the root of my own experience.
Interesting.
I'm kind of like just like in pause here, because it's like everything you're talking about is literally I say this to Marcos all the time. It's just funny how like every guest we have on is just hitting the nail. It's hitting that. It's just knocking on the door that I'm thinking about. For me, I've been thinking about life in a sense that I just look at everything as like a void now. Like the future, the past, side to side, all dimensions for me is just a void. It's a black void, not in a dark and eerie thing, but it's just a void. And to be very present, to be aware, to lower your threshold of understanding of this being state you're talking about, that's what's going to allow you, for me, that's what's going to allow you to grab into this void and weave the life that you want, right? That's what I've been thinking. And, doing the HRV stuff, I understand that. I think like that makes sense for most people because it's scientifically backed. Hey, get a higher HRV, do a little stress reduction. We see it long-term, short-term HRV. And when you have this better sense of coherence, thoughts align, your physical body aligns, spirituality aligns, and you're like, man, I just feel like I'm moving through life. And for me, moving through life, like taking that void and just weaving the life that I want to create instead of feeling like I'm resistant to the change, if that makes sense. So yeah, no, I love that. I freaking love that. Yeah.
Yeah, Seamus is kind of a nerd about those particular things, I would say. But I get it. I think everybody kind of has a different way of like, I guess like to a degree, this is like kind of like a self-auditing kind of idea, right? Like you're trying to develop this kind of like introspective relationship with yourself and be able to kind of identify, I guess, like core values. And then like, again, like I think for me, it's been writing them down and then like going back and making sure I'm still aligning with it over and over again as every couple weeks things just change. And actually the goal, so when we had DP on, Seamus, and he gave us that challenge of the goal card, I went and looked at it again today, and I'm like, I'm literally doing everything on this list of like the identity, the identity section, which again, I was like, all right, I guess I kind of hit the nail on the head. I guess the manifestation of like those particular items are really what I do value, which is great,
Yeah.
Maybe there's like one or two I can maybe add at this point, but I was just sharing it with another client because they were like, something you said last week really sparked me to write this down, and like I feel like really good, and I like have new motivation all of a sudden. And it's like weird how like I don't know what the hell I said on that call that was like that influenced that, because like I mean it's always just like motivational interviewing essentially with each person, but something said the right way that on that particular call made a world of a difference. So I'm like, damn it, I wish I would have recorded it and figured out what the moment was. And tomorrow I'll ask her like what it was to like help her do a deep dive, and really play more and like again become more effective this week than she was the week before, in a state where she is at like the highest stress point. So maybe that reduction of stress happened as she like wrote it all down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. I think what you're touching on too in coaching is sometimes that kind of unknown factor of like sometimes it maybe isn't even exactly what you said or how you said it, but like being there with them, helping them, giving them almost like that open space of neutrality to process and reflect on that inner, like you were talking about, that inner audit of, okay, how is Marcos reflecting back to me? I'd be curious to hear more about your perspective on that. Just kind of working in the coaching space too, of what is happening, what is the value of, having that conversation and hearing back what's going on for you. And I was going to touch on what Seamus said too, of, the void. I love that you're bringing in the void. You guys are so fun of like bringing these different elements here. But I think what you're speaking to, or at least what I was hearing out of that, was like, oh, like there really isn't a future. There isn't a past. There isn't really anything except for what's here right now.
Yeah.
And then, so how can we audit within what's here and now to support ourselves in navigating life?
Yeah. Yeah.
So how would you position that question directly to me, Taylor? Because like it's got me thinking about like, what am I answering exactly there?
Yeah, great. I would say like what what, I mean, it sounds like you do coaching and motivational interviewing, right? So like, what are you seeing as that tangible value of the coaching conversation?
Mm.
Hmm.
That's a great question. Um, I think what has shaped my current perspective has been a result of the trials and tribulations that we all went through in 2020.
Mm.
We're all looking for some person to confide in and kind of, have a, kind of a group think discussion about like the good and the bad. And I think a lot of the times people, it's weird because a lot of times people will be like, well, I didn't want to bother you. And I was like, well, I mean, you pay me for you to bother me, like essentially, right? Like, do not feel bad. This is what I do. um, and I think what it is it builds, it's probably like a friendship adjacent, right? Like in a coaching relationship, like they trust me as though I'm a friend, but they're listening to me as though there's like some perspective to their answer that I can help them get to, the guide, right? So it's like you build this really, it's an interesting dynamic kind of relationship because obviously like there is, a financial incentive on my end, right? And I have to keep it professional, but like the more that it's like whimsical and fun and they feel like it's a safe space, the better the results become. Um, and so, like in the last year, as I identified that a particular system didn't work well for me because I didn't get enough of the person, I was just coaching the data. Then, and I'm a math guy, the data was pointless, right? And so, yeah, this, connection based coaching model, as people might call it, is really just again like a deeper assessment every week with these people. You might even call it like nutrition coaching therapy. Honestly, it's kind of what it is. And I've learned if I give people 2 weeks versus one in between a check-in personally, that there's a lot that can go on in 14 days. And that might mean that they have 10 of those days where they just did not give a shit. And so, it is a value exchange like, hey, show up to your meeting, good, bad, or ugly. We're going to correct it right then and there, and you're going to get right back to it. And therefore, their results come quicker and stay longer.
Yeah.
So, I mean,
Yeah.
that's what I moved to. I'm far happier. I don't have to do what everybody else does and market and be like, I need 1,000 people, like to work with.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's really this just deeper understanding and quote the guide role, and bringing in at this point as the guide, constantly going out and curating new ideas from, whether it's IHP or whether it's PN or whether it's NCI or whether, whatever three-letter organization that has some sort of like CEU attached to it, right? Like
Yeah.
they might be building a system and I'm adapting that to meet the need of a client. And I didn't realize how much I needed that until this year to
Oh yeah.
bring new ideas to the table because they talk about every week. They're like, hey, like, how are you going to use this in your practice? It's like, I don't know, but I'm going to try to bring it up in conversation somehow, see where it leads. And I think it's gone gangbusters in the last couple of months, honestly.
Yeah. I'm in agreement with it. I've seen Marcos's growth a lot, and I think people could even see it on like the social media and like even for myself. Like Taylor, to answer your question, like or just more of the tactical stuff, like the week to week stuff, the coaching. Like I've just really seen the blossom of relationships become more about quality rather than like quantity, and just become realistic about like if you're kind of going back to that 2020 thing, like if you're creating and fostering a good culture, connection, and community based off of that motivational interviewing or really just serving the person in front of you and the people, yeah, there's that financial incentive, yeah. But I think as a coach, I just see coaches like we need more good coaches in this world to help people through their stuff. And I think I've been through many models of where it's like, yeah, get on a monthly call or like you buy into a course and it's like you actually never get to see the figurehead that you bought it from, and you're like, who am I even working with? And like Marcos and I are about that. We're really about like, no, we want to be at the front and center with you in the fight, doing it. I don't want to just take your money and go like, all right, never talk to me again. I just find that to be quite frankly like dumb. I don't know how, I don't know how some people justify it to themselves to be a coach and then take someone's money and then go like, well, the client never changed, right?
Right.
Then I have to like, fudge
Mhm.
some numbers or fudge things. Like now I just document. I don't even create things. I just like, client said this. Look at the wins, Client struggling still. That's okay.
Yeah.
And it's just a curation of it is there. I'm curious, Taylor, like, I know you talk, I know we're talking about motivational interviewing and things like this. I'd love to kind of see more so about like, you talk about trauma, you talk about like addictions, or kind of like you said more, you're coaching more, not like we're more nutrition and fitness, right? And obviously we touched on
Mm-hmm.
lifestyle, but you're talking more about like deeper states of health. Like, can you explain that to us? Explore that a little bit with us.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. And I just want to say too, I appreciate kind of hearing y'all's perspectives, being in the field, kind of day to day, working in this environment, and how it seems like, that transition more towards how can we make a human connection? How can we make this light and fun and enjoyable is as important as, having the science and the tools and the data. So I just like appreciate hearing that from y'all. And then, transitioning more towards, the mental health and trauma aspect of it. It's really, to me, it's coming back to that audit of, okay, so you go through, let's just say we've all been through trauma, right? In one form or another, we can compare how extreme, right? But the human experience, right? We've all been through some level of trauma, like being born in this world, getting raised in this world. And so, the first question I ask is, well, how is that affecting your day to day? And for some people, right, the day to day is manageable, right? It's, I've, built up coping mechanisms and resources that are working for me. But for some people, it's either not manageable, right? You're having just these extreme states of frozenness uh, or anxiety, right? That are just so intense, they kind of are debilitating. And so for those people, it becomes more urgent, right? So those are people, they're usually easy to engage in a conversation about healing trauma, right? Because they're like, I need this, or I'm not functioning in this world. Um, Compare that to where I feel like y'all probably see a lot more work is like, okay, what's the value for someone who's high functioning, kind of getting through day to day pretty well? Where's the value in that? And to me, that's more towards, okay, how can I move towards that inner state of peak performance? How can I make, processing the mental and emotional load of life easier and easier for me? And what tools are actually working to do that? And so whether it's extreme trauma or, trauma that feels manageable, addressing the inner emotional components of that to me is just about inner freedom, right? Because if let's just say, for example, I went through like a traumatic experience where I, this is a personal story. It's just to give context. So as a kid, like I didn't grow up in a tremendously abusive household by any means, but I do have a memory of like, my dad grabbed me by the throat once and like slammed me against the wall. Right. And to me, so like that's trauma, right? Childhood trauma experience. And so what is the negotiation there that happens? Like, well, I'm going to never, I'm going to do my best, right? I'm going to shut down and never, ever interact like that, right? So I don't ever end up in an experience where my dad's doing this, right? For example. So what does that mean? That means I'm compensating, I'm creating a compensatory behavioral structure around avoiding that conflict again. So the way I like to think about it is like, okay, so I'm just going to shut down all those emotional experiences that led to that event so that I can, stay safe in this environment. And functionally in that environment, right? As a kid, it's like, oh yeah, that's helping you stay safe, helping you survive. But as an adult, right, if we don't kind of readdress and come back to those core experiences and reprocess and renegotiate from our current perspective as, well, my parents are no longer like even around, but if we're still experiencing that fear when that emotion comes up of like, oh, like I might, get hit or abused or thrown against the wall, it's debilitating now. And so reprocessing those experiences in, a helpful way so that, oh, I can have the full spectrum of emotional experiences without feeling like I need to run, hide, or cope with either addiction, or, it doesn't even have to be drug addiction. It could be, video games, um, you know, TV, we're all coping. We all have a little addiction. So to me, it's just really, how can I unwind that, have the full emotional experience, and, keep being able to show up in life with more and more ease, if that makes sense.
Mm. Yeah, the past trauma, right? Do you find that people you're working with that, like, that's a part of their identity in a sense? Like they like hold it as part of that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think you're touching on such a core piece of it, and sometimes a core piece of like why change or transition is hard, is because you start to construct your identity around those experiences. And as you construct your identity around those experiences, you're just almost like aligning yourself with having more of the same.
Right. That's like well, negative feedback loop, if you will, right? Or
Yeah,
positive
exactly.
feedback loop, but with the negative, right? No, I've noticed that in coaching a lot of times, like how one thing then just leads to some sort of like kind of cyclic relationship, right? Where it then, or spiraling down the toilet type of relationship with whatever the thing they're trying to address or work through. But yeah, like I think that kind of goes back to like, regularly kind of sitting down with yourself and assessing, like, okay, again, I always use this quote, and it's actually from one of the mentors I've been with, and he goes, control what you can, cope with what you can't, and concentrate on what matters, right? Like the 3 C's, if you will. I mean, all right, like you need to have good coping mechanisms when some sort of situation is there, and you need to kind of lean into it. Hell, like as a man, sometimes you just need to cry for a second. Dropped my son off to a camp this morning, and one of our other health coaches in our other organization that Seamus and I both work with brought up a question about like, who recommends a good egg white protein? I'm going on a whey detox and just going to try something, sent her the link. And I was like, if it makes you feel any better, it's Travis Zipper approved. And then it got me thinking about him, who was basically who I owe this career to, because I didn't even know that it was possible. Yeah, I like had a moment where I'm like, shit, how long has it been? Has it been 2 years since he passed? And I like went into Facebook and looked it up. I was like, oh, it's almost here. It's like, oh yeah, like the change of this season, the end of August. It was like late August when it happened. And I was like, man, like that was the only way I know how to cope with that, is just kind of like do that. And I want to reach out to his mom and, let her know like that, that person still like is held near and dear to me. And even though he doesn't exist, I was thinking about it today. I was like, I actually want to reach out to her and let her know, like, I actually want to propose something to you. I'd like his name to be the scholarship that we're going to offer through the nonprofit that continues nutritional education for people that need it most. And that led to like this thing of like, what can I control right now? I have opportunities and things I want to create for people. So let's do that. And, I'm concentrating on what matters most. And that's again, kind of like fulfilling somebody's legacy, because he didn't have the opportunity to do that. And I know damn well he would have been a part of it. So.
Well, and I appreciate too. It sounds like part of your way of processing too is like honoring and, calling back to the value. And in a sense, it sounds like almost like they're who they were is like living on in the way that you're able to carry that, and honor that in your own experience.
Yeah. No, I appreciate you sharing that, Marcos.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah. And
indirectly, like, he was a mentor to me too. Because I was part of like not the organization that Marcos went, but the certification that they did for nutrition. And I was like, I met Marcos and I went through the courses and I was like, dude, this guy's a genius. Not knowing, but knowing actually that Travis had passed, I just didn't put the two and two together because I was watching these courses and modules, and I was like, every single day I was like, man, this guy's dropping bombs. And then I just remembered, I was like, oh, I think this is the person Marcos was talking about. Like, and like, I just realized, like, dang, like that. So, no, man, I appreciate that, Marcos. I definitely think we'll have his name live on and keep the nonprofit thing going on, because I think that guy was way too short. He had so much more potential to like give this
Oh
earth,
my
man.
God.
He had so much more, man.
Yeah, like, and the reason why I bring that story up is kind of an aside with someone else that's dealing with a similar struggle. You know, and I'm like, hey, take as much time as you need to process the 1 year anniversary of the loss of a good friend, you know? And, you know, I know, like, you just need to focus on, again, like, and you need to concentrate right now on what's going to bring you, you know, peace and value to your life, and making sure that all those, you know, all those things that need to be done, and the, like, again, the celebration of life or whatever that is. But you also need to know that, like, there's things that are out of your control. Like, again, maybe it is emotions for a little bit and it's okay, but I mean, I see this with my wife, where she gets so fixated on that particular, you know, thing, and then she's wanting a objective reality. Like, I need a diagnosis of something. I'm like, how about you just learn how to not focus on stuff that would, like, kind of fester it, or bring it up to, and bring it to a head, you know, like, find an alternative, find a thing that's, like, not doing that. And I mean, more and more now, you know, from my rudimentary understanding of psychology, and, like, things that feed that really quickly, is our devices that are in our pocket all the time. You know, the highlight reel. Why isn't me? Why am I not getting the same results? Blah, blah, blah. You know, you spend 2-3 hours on it. It's like, yo, if you put that phone away for 2-3 hours, I bet you could accomplish what that other person's doing and showcasing right now, you know? And hey, I've been there, you know, I've been to a place where I'm like, why not me? And then I was like, oh yeah, I'm not doing shit. How do I expect it to actually work if I don't put in any work?
Yeah. Yep.
Absolutely too. And then just talking about that, you brought up for me kind of diving into that mindset piece of it. You know, the difference between wanting to be more fit and actually having more fitness. And it's like, we spend so much, and this is kind of at the root of like Buddhist psychology too, is as you let go of wanting, you're actually making more space to do the damn thing. And
Ooh.
so, yeah.
Do the
And
damn
so it's
thing.
do the damn thing, right? Because it's like, when you're in the mindset of wanting, you're actually kind of in an affirmation or a mindset of lack, right? Like, I don't have this thing I don't have this, I don't have this, I don't have this, I want it. And like, understandably so, like, that starts to feel really not good on the inside, right? When you're feeling like you're looking around and it's constantly like, I want these things that I don't have.
Yeah.
And what you're speaking to, Marcos, I think is more of that. Well, yeah, of course I don't have these things. I'm not taking time to go from the wanting, right? It's nice to, I mean, it's wanting is catalyst, right, for change. But making that transition from wanting it to putting the steps and taking action towards that. And, you know, to me, it's both psychological and action based. It's like, we want to take positive action, but also, can we internally in the process let go of the feelings of lack and limitation to kind of anchor in, what is it experiencing? What does it feel like mentally and emotionally to already have that? Right.
Yeah.
So if someone's saying, for example, like, oh, I want to like build more muscle at the gym, I want to like be jacked. For example, you know, you can start to feel what it might feel like to be that person today. And really what we're getting at here, and I don't know if you've ever heard of the work of like Joe Dispenza, but different tangent, but
Coming
really what we're getting
supernatural.
at here is, really what we're getting at here is feeling today that state of being that you're looking to embody, and allowing that to say like, oh, I'm willing to change and start to be that person today, whether I look jacked today or not. Right. I can go to the gym, start taking those steps, but I can also mentally and emotionally get on board with feeling whole enough and complete in that process, so that so it's a little bit easier. And
Yeah.
to to me, like more motivating when you get into that feeling enough. It's more motivating than when you're saying, "Oh, I'm not there yet. I'm not there yet.
Yeah.
I'm not there yet."
No, it's
Yeah.
such a good point that he brings up, Marcus. Like the one thing I was kind of thinking about there while you were saying that is like, and talking about like the want and the being in the thinking phase as compared to the action phase. Like I always tell people with like, for example, the fitness is a good one, is like you can spend 2 hours sitting on your couch creating the best freaking workout, thinking about it, highlighting and all that, or you could just spend 5 minutes to 10 minutes doing a walk. Which do you think is going to be better for you? And people are like, oh yeah. But it's also the truth too. Like embodying that and stuff like that is also truth in a sense that if you can embody it, think it, and be it, and walk through that pavement, I think it's just you're in that state. Dude, you're so right. Creating a space instead of the want space, it's the space to take action.
Mm-hmm. The 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 crazy thing there, though, Taylor, that you mentioned is like kind of another key focus of being a good coach. Like wants and was it? It's dreams and goals is probably how I would translate it. A dream is something that you want, but there's no specific actions to get you there. Goal is something that you're going to take specific actions to get you there.
Yeah.
So many people come in with this idea of this dream body or this dream physique or this dream whatever, and the coach's job is to make it a goal, right?
Yeah.
Actionable, written down. And I mean, I don't like giving my clients homework because it's just like, there's a little bit of pushback. But like, I kind of nudge them like, how do you need to see your goals? What's going to help motivate you? And my one client like literally sat down. I was like, he's like, I've already kind of done it. Let me just finish it out like completely. Sat down, literally wrote out the entire timeline, like going to his wedding, his honeymoon, all this stuff. Boom, created the action plan, right? And then I was like, can you share it with me? Boom, and now each week he's like whether he's ahead or not, he's like, I'm going to push through because if I can get there sooner, I'm going to be much happier. And I know that we can like feed back up. I've done this before. We've done it together. And he's like, God damn it. I'm fucking getting my fat ass on the zip line. It's basically what he's saying. He's like, I'm too fat right now to do this zip line. And I am not going to allow this to be something that I cannot do because I love it. That's like that's the experience I want out of my honeymoon. And now he has action plans, and I've tweaked a few little things with like, kind of his workspace and other things that he's trying to work on as well. And I mean, the states of like just different people and personality types is also where the more experience you have within coaching, the more you're like, all right, like I think we should try this, or I think you should do this, and you got to give them a cheat code, right? Like hell, I can look back and the time I was most successful personally was when I wrote down all my numbers I needed to hit because I thought those numbers would translate to me making it to regionals in CrossFit as an individual. I surpassed all those numbers and I made it to that level and actually basically beat out the other top dog in the gym who wasn't in school full time. He was actually graduated. And I was like, all right. They're like, you do realize you just like beat Nick. And I was like, I did. like that moment. It's like, I was just more prepared for during the open. They announced the workouts and we would do it the night of, right? So we could recover enough to do a second attempt. He would maybe beat me on the second attempt, but in my head, it's like, hey, like when it comes to strategy and gaming this shit out, like I got you, bro. Like that's all that matters to me. Chalked it up as a W, and I said I'm moving on because I know you're gonna beat me when you redo it. Man, but yeah, I mean, another interesting one, and I want to get your take on this. And I read a book that talked about having more fun and creating fun as a habit for people. Do you find that with people that you're working with that they're not doing anything that like fulfills them in a fun category?
Good point, Marcos. Good one.
Yeah, I think that's a great question. And I think spot on. If you're not prioritizing it, prioritizing fun, then, it's not going to happen. And I would say, yeah, a lot of the people I work with, they tend to get fixated, right? Like you were talking about earlier about that fixated thing, right? I think with your wife, it's easy to get fixated on like, oh, I can have fun after I fix this, and this.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, well, sure. But what you're getting at is how can we have fun in the process?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to connect this even more because while you were explaining, the concept of dreams versus goals, it got me thinking about one, that ziplining story is great because it sounds like part of that motivation was a fun event on the back end of it with his partner or her partner. I forget if it was a guy or a girl.
It's a he. It's a he.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good. With their partner ziplining on their honeymoon. I mean, like, so it sounds like kind of baking enjoyment into it. And I would love to hear from you, like how you've seen that show up too.
Ask that again. Sorry, like
basically kind of flipping it back on you, like how you've kind of in your coaching process, like seen the piece of like fun show up.
Okay, got it. Yeah. Honestly, this project has created the most fun. It's made me more invested in all the things that help actually curate what people don't know they need from me. So we'll call that the parasocial experience, right? It's something that I'm continuing to learn about as well. And I'm like, what started as this thing that could potentially maybe be, quote, a lead magnet is no longer that. The content that I try to create is answering questions in a unique way that were from my clients. So, that means I need to listen better. It means I need to take more stock into what they're doing. I need to bring up their stories on here. I'm bringing up the story of my client simply because, it's what he went back to with his training was an old format. Didn't try to find something new. He's like, this has worked before. I know it can work again, and, but again, like it took him writing down and seeing how much time he could truly dedicate to something. Then he realized what happened. So to me, what's been fun? Well, I mean, I got this little gadget right here. This is fun. This is cool. I have to learn how to use new technology. I'm all about that. How do I make it more showy? Who do I bring in that can edit it better than I can do? What am I communicating and translating there to like help get the message spread? Fun is the creative process to me. And I wouldn't say that I'm an overly creative dude, but when you if you kind of think of like every one of your reel edits as slightly like a Picasso painting, as weird as that might sound, you're like, you put more stock into it. They're never perfect. And I think that's kind of the funny thing is like, I think a lot of people might look at that and be like, yo, like, how'd you do that in one take? And it's like, no, sometimes I'll have 7 takes and I'll send a couple of the outtakes and like my dude will splice it together and it makes for like, again, like a real story. And layering in that authenticity is fun. Like, God, like you would think this is so easy. It's simple. All I got to do is say these things, but then it's not. But that's to me, like, I like that. And I think honestly, that mindset has been really developed by CrossFit because constant failure, you're failing reps, you're getting beat by other people, but yet you like, if you are an athlete type, you're addicted to that. I'm actually constantly in search of more failure at this point in my life. You're trying to ride the line. And isn't that really what, like you mentioned, muscle growing experience? Like if you're not pushing your limits and testing yourself every week, well, then how do you know? Within the confines of safety or in the program. And it's gotten better and better with each iteration. And ironically enough, we've basically been running the same exact freaking program for going on like a year at this point, and still yields result because you're like, oh, like swap out a couple movements, bring a few different ones back, get to the rep range. You're like, oh my God. Like I remember when this was like 1 plate. I remember when it was 2 plates, tried to hit 315 for bench today for 3, got folded a little bit, In my head, I was like, but it's fun. Like failing is part of the fun to me. And if people can do that in my eyes, man, like watch out. Those people are unstoppable,
I want to add to that, Marcos. It's like being able to like having more mini games on this big game that we call life, right? Like that benching thing, like that's a great analogy. like you're chasing the failure, but it's a win because it's like, ah, man, shucks, didn't get it today, but now you got something to look forward to. Progress over perfection, right? I mean, it's the same thing for
Mm-hmm.
me. If you look at my programming, it's been the same for the last 8 months, and I tell people, I'm like, I don't really deviate from anything. I like the fun for me is the little novelty that I'll add in there, the little fun stuff in there. But I'm the same guy day to day, pretty much across all fields. I just have fun, just being above 6 feet above the ground. So I put play into a lot of things. But I agree, though, Taylor. Like, I mean, Mark, what Mark's saying too. Like a lot of people focus on what new metric they need to hit, what they need to hit for work, what they need to hit with their family, and it becomes this thing where it's like, I mean, at some point, like I was listening to like a Tim Ferriss thing about like everything has to be optimized in life, and I'm like, I've been that person.
Yeah.
Where for me, I actually schedule in like blank space or blank things that like, one of the things I was working with my lady, for example, is just like being super present. That like, let's see what the spontaneity is. Let's see what this conversation is being a lot better. I'm really having fun right now. Or like, hey, she brought up like, let's do this little walk thing, and I was like, oh wow, like because I had this space for that, I didn't even know that was gonna be that fun and stuff
Mm-hmm.
like that. So I think for me, I've been able to just adding on with Marcus, just have more fun by not necessarily saying, hey, have fun, but like having space, like you're talking about, to have it. And sometimes I do schedule it in, like time with my brother is very important to me. So I have it on there as a weekly thing, like a
Mm-hmm.
daily talk that we do. And man, it's just, I laugh, I cry, I have fun. And I'm like, man, this is making life a lot better because I tell Marcus all the time this story of like, I feel like sometimes with my life, I've been at a point where I'm getting to the same place I'm going to get to, but I'm just so tight. Like I'm just so freaking
Yeah.
tight. I'm so like anal retentive, and I'm so like OCD, and I'm like, dude, you're gonna get to the same place with the same like. Can you just be like, chill, suave, je ne sais quoi, like have the chillness, and yeah, I've just been able to, maybe it's a little bit of a go around the second time or whatever, but like I just been trying to let go of like that I don't know how to explain it, but just that just like that intensity.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
you gotta have it.
Yeah. I'm going to tag on here too, because I really appreciate this, kind of conversation into finding that spontaneity, finding that fun in this process. And it's a really kind of, I'm finding it a good call to action to how can I incorporate into my own coaching practice? How can I incorporate more of this part of the conversation into people's lives? Of it's great to, have a goal, have a focus. Those pieces are obviously valuable, but how can we make space for that spontaneity? How can we make space to do something differently? And one, for the spontaneity, for the fun of it, but also for the diverging out of the normal pattern of I do this every day and I'm thinking the same thoughts and I'm doing the same things. But when you're adding in that piece of fun, in any which way, you're breaking the mold and saying,
Mm-hmm.
bringing something new into the equation, and just by that, right, you're forced to adapt. You're forced to become more resilient. You're forced to step out of your comfort zone and kind of open up to a fuller spectrum experience, so to speak. And within that too, Margot, I felt like your story really highlighted that growth mindset piece, and that having a results oriented goal,
Mm-hmm.
but really embracing and enjoying the process on the way to that results oriented goal, and kind of enjoying that process of failure or feedback, and how can I mentally find the enjoyment of that process. And to me, like, so much of life is that process, right? We're just in this process, and so being able to bring that mindset to it seems incredibly valuable.
Yeah, and that's what I try to share to people. Hey, these things that have worked for me, um, maybe they will also work for you. You know, spit it out there. I do know the thing that's helped me immensely is like moving out of the micro focus of the day and thinking of the scope of the week at times for certain objectives. And I mean, that's again, it's like like you said, it's like this embodiment of like presence in the day to day, the understanding of like the week to week, knowing the results will probably take month to month, and then like having this very macro perspective in terms of like your health journey, like not yeah, shameless plug. I mean,
Plug.
that's why we named it this, right? Like,
It really is.
we
It
named
really is.
we knew that it aligned in the journey of what we've been experiencing and what our clients were articulating, that it all really does. Ironically, our logo is a growth. It literally embodies an image of growth mindset, because it's like a brain that's sprouting a tree out of it at this point, and we don't have it up yet, but we will soon. And we're like, that's it. Like, that's really it. Like, you got to be shaping, the hardware in between the ears to understand, phases. Realistically, periodization is not just an idea that is specific to only training. You're going to periodize, work performance. You're going to periodize movement over training. You're going to periodize time with your kids. There's that idea and this kind of quarterly system that training kind of shows and highlights and illustrates. Like I keep on seeing that as a constant pattern and trend in my own life. It's like, all right, new quarter, what's going on? All right, we got school. All right, next quarter, daughter's probably walking, talking, and can wipe her own butt. You know what I mean? Like, all right, cool. So there's like one less thing, like offloading some work. Doesn't always mean you're adding more to it. But sometimes as there's things being offloaded, you then can onboard something new. So, the growth mindset, I don't think it is purely like just a biohacking thing. I think it's just a continual development of awareness as to like, what will be the most relieving thing I can do. So, I mean, people talk about it as like a power list or something so small so that you can like stack up your wins really quickly. And I mean, you just gotta, I think each day I play this game, and like I've created my own unique game and understanding to help that and curate it and then bring it into people's lives. For everybody that's watching this, they probably see me be, slowly moving and bobbing back and forth right now. They're like, oh, well, does he just have like an issue? It's like, no, like this actually helps me focus more, slow pace walk and do things. And I also talk about like, there's places and environments with clients that might be an opportunity for you to then alleviate something down the road that might be stressful. Right.
Yep.
So you just have to continue to tinker, try, iterate, as Seamus would say, and voila, then you find your North Star, your exact spice of life. And it's not up for me to decide. It's for me to just like kind of be like, yeah, here's a few different paths. Boom, 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 boom. Right. Which one do you want to try this week? All right, cool. You told me that was the one, or maybe they thought of a new one, right? I'm going to hold you to that. And I think that's what's evolved in my own coaching, is not like, I tell this quite frequently with guests, it's no longer the X's and O's. It's more about like the that path that we want to take right now.
Yeah, I think too what highlighted as you were kind of talking through that and thinking about growth and everything is what I'm hearing from you is the willingness to be flexible and adaptable over time and not say, well, this worked yesterday, right? And I'm gonna bring your daughter's example back into this. Like, well, like I was wiping my daughter's butt yesterday. I should just keep doing it forever because that was you know what I mean? It's a silly example, but it's like we get in these mindsets of, oh, like that was working yesterday, that worked 100 times, but being willing to say, oh, well, that's not it anymore. And moving from being willing to be adaptable enough to let that go and really going back to the identity piece is like being willing to continually embrace an ever-changing identity.
Yeah.
I
have a question on that, Taylor. Like this is something like I'd like to get enlightened on a little bit, because like I'm so, Marcos can say it, but like he sees the people around me. I'm so like growth focused. There's if you're in my sphere, like there's no time off kind of thing where you're gonna realize like, oh shit, if I'm hanging out with Seamus, like it's like sometimes it's like do or die. And it's like I have a problem turning off. Like I have a problem. Like that's what I tell people. Like I don't have a problem turning on. It's 5 a.m. Let's go.
Yeah.
So for me, with my identity, sometimes it hurts to have other people in my identity in my circle that are like, oh, they're not that same style in my circle, but I have to be willing and acceptable of that. So I wanted to ask you, what are your thoughts on like someone that is like stuck, someone that knows they need to change, but like for some reason, after many conversations, maybe even coaching, maybe even therapy, like doing, I don't know, different things, they're still stuck. Like like I can't weave my head around it because I'm not that person. So like for me, I'm like, oh yeah, just move on. Like that's for me. But I know for that person, like I'm trying to ask, like, what do you think it might be if someone is stuck, like that can't move?
Mm-hmm. That's such a good question. And well, let's explore. Let's see kind of what comes to fruition here, and thinking like kind of through that process of someone who's stuck. I mean, the question is, my first question would be, well, what is causing the stuckness? And what is more comfortable about being stuck than changing? Right? Because I think at the root of that is, it's more as maladaptive as like being stuck might be. Right. Let's just take like an extreme example of, let's just say like, I don't know the type of phobia, but I think it's agoraphobia, where you're like afraid to leave your house.
Okay.
Right. But there's a phobia out there, right, where you get to a stuck state enough where you're afraid to leave your house.
Gotcha.
And basically the whole premise is, well, it's safer to be stuck here in my house, even though I know going outside and going for a walk would be good for my health. It feels safer to stay stuck in this house than it does to go out. Right. So I think translating that kind of tangible example to, more nuanced stuck states, like mental, emotional stuck states, it's, really saying it feels, seemingly based on my past experiences, it feels safer to be in this stuck state than it does to change. And so moving out of that stuck state, it's one, letting go of the resistance to whatever you're resisting. It'll be different for everyone, but oftentimes stuckness comes from resistance, right? Not allowing what is, not accepting what is, holding on to this state, for dear life. So how can we start to process that relationship with fear and anxiety in a way to de-stress the system enough to say, oh, like I feel safe and secure enough to step towards change, right? Because to step towards change, you have to feel on some level that it's okay to take a risk, right? If you feel so stuck and debilitated and scared, it's not safe to get up at 5 a.m. and change your whole lifestyle and start biohacking, right? It just becomes so dysregulating to the identity of what is normal for me. So I think really being able to process through that fear piece first would be a huge place to look, and, going into that introspective place of, okay, what is actually here? What am I actually afraid of? And by starting to ask those questions and investigate and unravel and inquire into what's actually happening, you start to open the door to your own answer out of that stuck state. Because, the specifics will probably be different for everyone based on their experiences. But to me, the core of the stuck state is, it's safer here than changing.
Man, that makes a lot of sense. Because, I mean, it's not just in my clients, patients, or people, but like Marcos knows this too. You know this too. It's like, I'll just use the basic example of like, you get a client like, I want to lose this weight. I want to do this, 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 and this. I want to make sure I'm training. I do all this. And like, they say all this stuff. Like, I want to do all this stuff.
Yeah.
Then they just go do the same thing that they're doing before. They avoid you. They don't even want to talk to you. And it's like, you say all these things and you say you're frustrated and you say you're mad. And I can see you're clearly stressed about this thing. Yet you're still in this state. So I do appreciate that. I think that brings a lot more enlightenment to like what, how to approach it with someone, how to ask the right question, because yeah, it might be really a fear, not even a fear of the change. I think some people are okay with the change, I think, but you're right. It might just actually because they're just super comfortable in that state. There's something about it that's so comforting that there's something about the change that they're like, nah, So
Yeah.
I thank you for enlightening
Mhm.
that. It's just something that I think about because I'm like, man, this person keeps saying these things, yet it's been
Yeah.
a long
Yeah.
time, it's been a
You
long
reminded
time.
me, I was gonna say, you
Yeah.
reminded me too of one more piece. Um, there's a great framework where it's basically like the normal template for most people is we're looking at future positives and present negatives, right? Okay,
Mm,
right now, this, and this I don't like, and I want to move towards this positive future, right? And so what we're leaving out is present negatives or present positives and future negatives, right? Because it's always a trade off. If we're
yeah.
moving, right, even if someone's in a stuck state, right, there's present negatives to being in a stuck state, right? You're kind of not able to move towards what you want in life. But the present positive might be like, well, it's familiar and it's safe and I know what to expect here. Um, so it's like bringing the full picture, I think, can also be a motivator for clients who are in that state of uh, stuckness to say, well, what's good about where you are now, and oftentimes appreciate because right, oftentimes appreciating where you are right now or acknowledging the positives of where you are now can open the door to saying, oh, it's okay where I am right now, and it's okay to change, right? Because if you're in a stuck state, you're in a stuck state, and you're resisting it. You're saying, I hate being in this stuck state. I hate being in this stuck state. I want to, like you said, do all the things. I want to lose weight and smash this, and do that, and do that, and do that. You're not taking into account like the present positives of being who you are.
Mm, I,
Mhm.
I gotta ask that question. Um, dang, this is. I feel like we're going deeper into territories, but I want to just make sure we're respectful of your time. I mean, it's been an hour and all this. Marcos, would you have follow ups, any other questions? I just want to make sure Taylor we're just respecting his time here.
Well, full disclosure, I had on your schedule it said until 2:30, so I
Yeah. Yeah,
completely
the
planned until 2:30.
90 minute.
Yeah.
Yeah. We do that intentionally because we know like sometimes there's that like little sidebar at the end or I mean the man like some of the deeper thinking questions, the stuckness, the willingness to change. I think that's like a great way of like kind of opening that up, but like identifying, present positives. And
Yeah.
I have seen more of that being very effective in my own practice. And again, I think precision nutrition will call it bright spots of their current state, right? Things that they're
Yeah.
doing well when they're, constantly flooding you with like the stream of negative, and you're picking more of it out to like illustrate that like, hey, this thing has been effective. Like, can we lean into that more for this week? And to me, it's just like, I mean, it's momentum, right? It's like, how do we build it up? How do we capture, in my eyes, 14 days of like consistency to that thing? And again, whereas before I was like, yeah, if I don't talk to this person for 2 weeks, we could do it in 14 days. I was like, but if there's a hiccup, that's where that like in steps that weekly, debrief, right? Um, no, I mean, it's just path of enlightenment for everybody is definitely different, but that stuckness, and the agoraphobia example, um, there's comfort in current pain for some reason, that you have to like you got to dive into deeper, and
Yeah.
willingness to change is a tough one. Um, and generally speaking, the only two motivators I know of that will generally get people to get up off their ass at times is that big health scare, like
Yeah.
they're in the emergency room, right? And then they want to like rectify those things and live a healthier life, or rock bottom, proverbial rock bottom with like finances, or maybe it's a substance or abuse or some sort of abusive behavior or addictive behavior. But I mean, there's like two, I mean, those two are kind of correlated, but it's like only two things really, you know. So like getting ahead of it is generally not something people may be doing,
Yeah.
unfortunately. So hopefully we can continue to spread that word and awareness and get people to be, you know, regularly looking at themselves and, trying to, better upon their current state and finding their positives. Because I think that's kind of the main message of what we were articulating today.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, Taylor, is there anything that you're looking forward to, like anything that you're coming out with, or where can people find you? Just want to make sure we wrap this up so that people can work with you if they feel that they need to with our audience.
Yeah, thank you for that. And just tagging on to, I'll say that, but tagging on to what Marcos said too, of just, oh God, now I'm spacing on what I was going to say. Well, okay, I'll get back to there. But yeah, CoachTaylorsmith.com. That's where you'll be able to find me. And building out, mindfulness coaching for people who are experiencing anxiety primarily, and who are really interested in doing that deep inner dive into the self audit, as you said, of what is going on within me and how can I process that in a way that's going to allow me to show up in life the way I want to show up. So yeah, please come find me. Free 50-minute consults, and we can just discuss what tools, resources might be best suitable for you.
Man, love it. That's it's amazing value exchange for, again, just showing up. And I think we align with that too. I mean, when we screen people, it's not a sales pitch. It's making sure, can it be the right fit? And I know that you're just trying to show them value with that initial session, which I think is amazing. Because even just today, in slightly over 50 minutes, tremendous amount of value exchanged for us. So I can imagine probably getting more when it's just you and them. And yeah, I mean, this has been, again, it's a heady, deep year episode. I think a lot of people will really enjoy, hearing some things that you brought to the table, because it's definitely different and unique. And appreciate your time. Thank you for making me think and dive into, the ideas a bit more, and everything. For the listeners that made it this far, everything is listed in the show notes per the usual. Where to find Taylor more readily and easily accessible. If there were ideas and concepts that were there, they will also be pinned as well as timestamps to help you maybe skip over parts or go back to ones that you were trying to really get that message. So until next time, Macro Perspective is out.